Every leader, every entrepreneur, we all face a battle. But what if I told you the most important one isn't with your competition? It's actually happening right inside your own head. Yep, we're talking about the two selves that are running the show. And today, we are going to dive deep into that conflict.
Okay, let me ask you something. Have you ever been right there, sitting in a meeting, maybe on Zoom, and you're just nodding along, but inside you are screaming, "This is a terrible idea"? It's that really weird, unsettling feeling, right? Like you're an actor playing a part in your own life.
And that's where it gets, well, kind of dangerous. There's this powerful quote that just nails it. The danger is that over time, the mask starts to feel like your face. Just think about that for a second. You start building a business based on what you think you should want, not what you actually want. That's a huge problem.
So, what's really going on with this disconnect? Well, it's basically a symptom of a much deeper internal conflict, and that's what we're going to unpack right now. This battle between your true self and your false self.
All right, so let's break down these two inner voices. Now, what's really interesting here is that this isn't some classic good versus evil story. It's not about an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. It's way more nuanced. It's about understanding their jobs, their functions. You've got your authentic core versus your inner protector.
So first up, let's talk about the false self. The best way to think about it, it's like your internal PR manager. Seriously, it's this protective mask you started building way back when you were a kid, all to gain approval and, avoid getting rejected. Its one and only job is to shield you from judgment and pain. And in business, it shows up all the time. It's that little voice telling you, just take on that terrible client. It's not worth the conflict. Or it's the voice that's totally obsessed with hustle culture and how you look to everyone else.
And then, on the other side, you've got the true self. This is your authentic core. It's where all your genuine curiosity, your unique creativity, your deepest values, it all comes from here. Now, it's not perfect. Not by a long shot. The true self gets scared for sure. But the key difference is it operates from a place of I want to, not I have to. It is, quite literally, your inner compass.
Okay, this chart really breaks it down in a business context. Let's just look at a couple of these because they're so telling. Take motivation. The true self, the warrior, is all about creating value, solving a real problem. But the false self, the protector, it's just trying to gain approval and avoid failure. Or check this one out, their view of failure. For the true self, a failure is just a data point. It's something you learn from. But for the false self, it's a personal attack on your entire self-worth. You can see how huge this distinction is, right? It impacts everything from how you lead your team to how you build your brand.
So, the big question is, what happens when we let that protector, that false self, take the driver's seat? Well, the consequences? They're not pretty. Let's talk about the high cost of faking it and how this part of you can actually sabotage your own success. And trust me, the cost is absolutely massive. Get this. A study from UC Berkeley found that a staggering 90% of startup founders report experiencing burnout. 90%. And look, we all love to blame the long hours, right? But a huge, and I mean huge, overlooked cause is the psychological weight of being inauthentic. It's the sheer exhaustion that comes from constantly performing, constantly wearing that mask.
So the key here is to start recognizing the symptoms in yourself. Ever feel that nagging imposter syndrome, that constant fear you're going to be found out? Well, that's a direct signal from your false self, because in a way, you are acting a part. Or maybe you start to feel this resentment for the very business you built to be free, but now it feels more like a cage. You end up building someone else's idea of a successful company. And that, my friends, is a one-way ticket to burnout.
Okay, but look, it's not all doom and gloom. Far from it. This is where the warrior part comes in. The path forward is all about awareness and then taking action. So let's get practical and open up the toolkit for becoming what this is all about, a self-aware warrior.
Step 1 is pretty simple, but not always easy. It's just observation. You have to start noticing the red flags when your false self pops up. Things like a compulsive need for validation from others, or an intense fear of criticism. Maybe it's having a really hard time setting boundaries. When you feel one of these tripwires go off, the goal isn't to beat yourself up about it. No. The goal is just to pause and ask yourself one simple question. Who's in charge right now?
And here's a super practical tool you can use to dig a little deeper. It's called the 5 Whys technique. So, let's say you're thinking, okay, I'm going to hire this expensive PR agency. Step 1 is to ask why. Maybe the answer is to get more press. Okay, ask why again.
To grow our brand. Why? To attract more investors. Why? Because we need to look like we're a big deal. And why is that important? And maybe, by that fifth why, you realize the root motivation isn't actually about growth, it's a fear of not looking successful enough. See? That's a false self-motivation. And once you see it, you can make a much clearer choice.
You know, this whole journey really requires embracing something the false self absolutely hates: vulnerability. It sees vulnerability as a total weakness. But as the great Brené Brown puts it, vulnerability is not winning or losing, it's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. For a leader, that's not weakness, that is the ultimate strength. It's how you build real trust and psychological safety, which, by the way, a massive study at Google found is the #1 predictor of high-performing teams. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
Okay, so this all sounds good in theory, right? But let's see how it actually plays out in the real world. Because this internal shift isn't just a feel-good exercise, it can have massive, company-changing results. And there's no better example than the Airbnb story.
So back in the early days, Airbnb was really struggling. They were basically dead in the water. And their false self strategy was in full effect. They were chasing these skeptical VCs, trying desperately to look and act like every other hot Silicon Valley startup. And the result? Flatlined growth and a mountain of debt. But then, they pivoted hard. Instead of performing for investors, they just embraced their weird, creative, authentic selves. They literally designed and sold their own novelty cereal boxes, you might have heard of them, Obama O's and Cap McCain's, just to pull themselves out of debt.
Now think about that move. Selling cereal? That was pure, true self. It was creative, authentic, and completely off the script of what a serious startup was supposed to do. And by embracing that quirky, creative core, they made a fundamental shift. They stopped just being about cheap rooms and started building a brand about connection and belonging. In the end, their true self became their most valuable business asset, period.
So, when you boil it all down, it really comes to a choice. And it's not a choice you make once. It's an ongoing choice you have to make every single day as a leader. And the choice is this: are you just building a company, or are you building a legacy?
And here's the most important thing I want you to take away from all this: the warrior mindset. It isn't about being fearless. It's not about being invincible or pretending you have no doubts. And it's definitely not about trying to kill off your false self. You can't. It's about having the courage to be authentic. It's about learning to recognize that voice of fear, maybe even thank it for trying to protect you, and then consciously choosing to act from your core anyway.
So I'll leave you with one final question to think about. When you look at what you're creating every day, are you building a company that just checks all the right boxes? Or are you building a legacy, one that's resilient, deeply fulfilling, and most importantly, one that is uniquely and authentically yours?